Hello, everyone. This is Claudiu Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspire Show. And my guest today from Sedona is Mally Paquette. Mally's entire life has been deeply entrenched with indigenous cultures. Her spiritual roots are embedded with Native Americans. She founded a non-profit organization, NAAP, to serve the Lakota on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. For a decade, she studied the Lakota traditions, and in 2002, she was adopted into the Sioux tribe and cherishes this unique honor. Mally teaches through Chakra Psychology and her intuitive gifts. She listens to the deeper bodies and can translate one's physical ailments, offering a therapeutic new path to optimal health. She delivers healings through traditional yoga therapy and sound vibration. The study and technique of Kundalini Tantra, which Mally is immersed in, can guide an individual to discover true alchemy. The openness, which Mally discusses tantric ritual, will empower participants and open their souls to the divine relationship of the cosmos. Mally, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to share anything that can be of service to people.
And before we discuss about your spiritual journey, I would like to start by asking you, how did it feel to be adopted by a Native American tribe? How amazing is that?
Look, I get emotional already just with that being a random question. I think that it probably was the most powerful time in my life when I look back on it. I haven't been asked that for a long time. And I know that it was a doorway and a portal into what then took place that became more and more powerful. At the time it happened, it was an honor with people I loved and people who had become part of my life and my family's life, and who were teachers at a profound level. It's so interesting because I hadn't reflected upon what a portal it was into many other things that then opened many, many doors going into the future.
And did that really make you go deeper into your spiritual journey?
I already was very entrenched in my spiritual journey, without question. But I think that, you know, it can be sometimes for people events that take place that then open a doorway. For me, it has always been the people that cross my path more than an event. So when we meet people, to pay so much attention to their essence and what they have to offer us, I think that's something that I've just always paid a lot of attention to. So it was these people that completely changed my perspective of life and how I took it in, and then how I lived it. And they used to, my Lakota name is Chante Lakota Ween, which is Lakota hearted woman, because for 7 years I lived on the reservation 2 weeks, and then I would go home to my family. And each of those trips for 7 years, I would try and take one of my children with me. They were young at that time. When we began that journey, they were 3, 5, and 9. And how that experience would affect them was something that was beyond words. How it affected my marriage of 31 years now was very impactful. My family all slowly became involved and went out there and volunteered over time. But I think the biggest thing that it taught me was how we all see life through materialistic eyes. And I think the first 3 years, all I could see was the poverty and the lack of what these Native Americans had. And my parents were from Wyoming, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and Du Bois area. So I'd grown up around sweat lodges and on the reservations. And to me, these people were just normal. you know? And
Yes.
when I reflected back at this point, I was seeing through the eyes of an adult, and all I could see for the first 3 years was what they were missing. And there was a huge turning point that changed my life, changed the project's life. It changed the focus of everything I did for the next 4 years, because on the outside, it was all the deficits. But for what really matters in life, they have it in spades. And the loyalty between family members, the loyalty to a community was something that I was just blinded to. I was unaware. And at one point I had moved, I'd gotten a program going. It wasn't about just taking things out there with blankets and coats and food and ovens and sponsoring what electricity could be there. You know, that was the beginning of the 3 years, and then getting companies to come on board and whatnot so that I wasn't wasting money for items. I could get it directly transported and whatnot. But the second half became allowing people to have an opportunity that being on the reservation didn't really give people, through education and just really trying to change an exposure to little children who had never even, they didn't know what fruit was. I remember the first time we took crates of oranges, because I'd lived in Florida and had connections with a lot of the citrus growers. And the fact that there were children in America who didn't know what an orange was, I was speechless. Or elders that one trip, all we took in huge U-Haul rental, it was mattresses from a mattress company, only to get there and realize they had no pillows. They didn't even know what a pillow was. And these were going to the 7 tribes on Pine Ridge, but I just didn't understand the basic needs for a long time. Because when people are not proud of their home, you don't go in their homes right away. And it took winning people's trust in the first year that I would keep coming back, and that I would do everything I could in my power to bring what I could to help their lives matter.
Yes, beautiful. And I find very interesting that all these indigenous people all over the world, they are spiritually rich and asset poor, and in the West it's the other way around.
Right.
So that should change in order to keep the balance in the world, pretty much.
Yeah, it's true. My doorways to from Pine Ridge opened a lot of pathways when I did move to Sedona 15 years ago, because I didn't think in that small circle that I was maybe known. Like it kind of doesn't matter to me, so I just don't pay attention to it. And that opened doorways to a lot of medicine men here in Sedona, because they did know who I was for the efforts that we had passionately wanted to be involved in. And then those doorways of a lot of the medicine people here, true indigenous, opened my pathways for pretty much the last decade to South America, working with the Kogi. So it's where that world just continued. And my ties right now are very, very strong in South America with a tribe called the Kogi. It's Kogi, and 500 years ago they went up the mountain when the conquistadors came, and they've made very, very little contact with the Western world. And the depths of studying shamanism really came, that was another doorway that opened to me, from these people who live with absolutely nothing, one bag over their shoulder, and that's all they own. And they realize that everything on this earth is borrowed. And to refine your life to such simplicity certainly changed mine.
Yes, and that is something unthinkable for us, which are so accustomed with the, everything which is easier around us, the electricity, the hot water, the cars, and everything is within reach. So yeah, it's kind of unthinkable to just go through the jungle and take what the earth or the land provides for that particular day only, and then move on and live like that. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Going back to your...
Spending that time.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Don't be silly.
Going back to your time in the reservation, do you think that the new indigenous generations are willing to absorb the ancient traditions, and they are still interested in practicing these traditions?
The majority, unfortunately, have lost their way, like all of us. But there are many, many families on, I'm going to say, most all of the reservations who hold to those traditions and hold to their ancestral roots. Like, for example, here in Sedona, the Hopi land is about 3 hours north of Sedona. That particular piece of land, I love the refinement, because you see, it's not called a reservation. It's very insulting to them if you called it a reservation. It is their land, and it was land that the government didn't have them go to. They chose that land. And in Hopi tradition, that land is the handprint of God. There are mesas on that land, that each of the mesas, first, second, third, and fourth, are the fingers of God, and the thumb no one goes to but the elders. And because of that land being so remote, there are many families that I work with and I study with and take people up to visit, whom live absolutely from dawn till dusk the very traditional way. So again, somehow I've been blessed with meeting very traditional people that have taught me, and those are the people that I really support to share their culture. Reuben Sofke is the man who is a young elder, and for example, he was invited to California, just he and his family, to dance the eagle dance for the Dalai Lama's 80th birthday. So, life is circles within circles. And in these circles, you know how pure the connections are. And somehow everybody knows kind of about each other, because there's no superficiality.
Yeah, so you really need someone like you in order to visit these places, not necessarily the misas, but other places on that particular land, and understand its sacredness and the energy and the power.
It is, and there are all these people that I'm speaking of are living with enormous simplicity, enormous sacredness, and in my eyes that I had opened many years ago on Pine Ridge, they are the most wealthy people on the planet. But not many people are going to see that.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Again, spiritually rich. And they have
absolutely
that connection. And to be honest with you, I read a book by Selidoma, Malidona Some, from Burkina Faso. And at 13, 14 years old, they all go through an initiation to become men. And the gifts they are given, the experiences they go through, enriches them spiritually to like beyond belief. And that's what they carry with them throughout their lives. And it's much more valuable than the shirt on their back and the house or the car, and they understand that.
Well, it's really, what do we all have if everything was taken away. And what we have is the essence of who we are that comes out in our self-worth and knowing ourselves, and our word. Our reputation gets refined to our word. And it doesn't matter if you make a promise to someone and it gets delayed, but by gosh, whether it's a week later, a month later, or even if circumstances have to allow, a year later, it's honoring what you connected to promise the person. Time doesn't really even matter. And when someone says they're going to come through on something in these cultures, you know they're going to come through. The time just becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
You know, and then you have the greatest thing on the planet, and that is a sense of community. And it's the sense of community of who has your back and who you can trust. And then you truly are not walking alone. And the deeper piece of really learning all of our divinity while we're in a human body is to be constantly tested. That, you know, for me personally, yesterday was a very challenging day for me on the 3D world. It was really something. And it was not one of my happiest days on the planet. But you know, when I finally laid down and could go to sleep, I really spoke with spirit. It was not the people around me. It was the fact that I had been given a challenging day to remember that the unseen world held me, and the unseen world would guide my future days. That last night seemed daunting to me, but yet I don't ever have to think I'm alone. And when you go through a lot of shamanic initiations like you were speaking of, you have to tap into those realms because you are alone.
Yes. You mentioned about the spirit of community. Do you think that this is something which can save us as humanity in these trying times? And how do you see going back to that concept mentally and psychologically?
I do. You know, in the beginning days of the pandemic, I was very much reminded that, to me, humanity, I mean, this year of 2020 has been predicted for the eons of time. I mean, I think people in my yoga studio and healing center in 2019 thought, oh my God, she's getting a little crazy on us. But when everything shifted in the beginning of February to the middle of February, because astrology is sacred geometry in the sky and it's science, it doesn't lie. How you handle that is up to you. And so with that being said, as this happened, I think that I don't ever want to diminish the loss of life or diminish people who have not thrived in this. But what it took us back to were our family units, our smaller communities of, I know my life shifted a little with people whom I then chose to really have around me outside of my family or my kids. But that's what really gives us strength. And in the Lakota tradition, in the Native American tradition, that is how the Native Americans were broken. It was, a lot of people label it the demise of the buffalo, which served every purpose of their living for survival. But they even survived that. It was when they took the children to the boarding schools and they broke the family unit that it was just too much to bear. And so we in our culture in America are never really, it's never focused upon how family and a small sense of community is so important. So even though we still are separate from what our world had been, I want to believe that where we're going to be on the other side of this is a much more refined version of all of our lives. And the people who are kicking and screaming and really suffering more are fighting it. And sometimes, in my experience, it's that they don't want to sit with themselves. They don't want to come back to center, whether it's alone or with your partner or your family. But in the long run, we all have to do the work.
Yes, it's indeed, we have to sit with ourselves and see exactly or understand what's important. And for sure, these days I've been called crazy many times because of discussing certain subjects or reposting articles which didn't go very well with certain people. Which, okay, I won't go there now. So this concept of dividing the family and taking the kids away to the boarding schools, I think it was a concerted idea, a concerted concept, because it was applied in Canada as well. And only later on was kind of divulged to the public and everyone found out about it. But the damage was done. And I think no apology can fix what happened.
Well, the only thing is, everything in life is a process. Everything is cyclical. And, I'm in a human body. You're in a human body. I love the reminder that if we're in a human body, we're going to keep making mistakes. But the goal is to not make the same darn mistake over and over again. And so history hasn't been perfect. Leaders haven't been perfect. We're not perfect. But if we can just have courage and honesty to look at it and admit that it wasn't our shiniest moment, and come to our heart to forgive all the people involved, that's when we move up in dimensions and we move up into higher vibrational, more perfect people, but still not probably perfect.
Yes, and I was talking to another guest of mine about the indigenous people who, after being decimated by us, are so forgiving, and they are guiding us through shamanic practices, through knowledge which is passed to individuals like yourself. But we have to also ask for forgiveness. It's not, I think, enough.
Well, the big key is we have to ask for the forgiveness, but in, again, doing a lot of healing work, the hardest person to forgive is ourselves.
Yes, indeed.
It's hard enough to forgive other people, but we have to forgive ourselves, because no matter what the event is on this planet, we've co-created it. And we have manifested that event, that challenge, that story, to see how we handle it. And we don't always handle it so perfectly, but if you can raise your consciousness to realize that the people who come and mirror an aspect that does not seem like something you really want to give your time to, or you argue with, or you have a bigger mess with, whether it's business or personal, they're coming to test you. The easy people are easy to love. It's the challenging ones that come to refine us to not be reactive. And the more center we can hold, that it's all a show, and then shamanically to look at the fact that, gosh, along the way there were a lot of messages that we could have navigated this a little differently. And it's the work of the practice to pay more attention, to have more awareness, to listen to your gut, not your ego in your head. How does your heart feel, not your head?
Yes, you're right. We became a reactive society. We don't take the 2 seconds to think about the repercussions of our answer or our actions, and that's damaging for sure.
Absolutely. And, it's like in parenting. My kids are kind of 30 and 31, 33-ish type of age. So they're all up there. And I know from my experience as a parent, what they remember are my actions, not my words. And if parents could realize that following through and how you live your life, whether that's with kindness, with service, they don't remember the money. They don't remember when they had money. They don't remember when you didn't have money. They just remember the essence and the energy that they experienced. And that could take so much pressure off so many parents right now if they could just accept and sit and be 100% present. That is worth more than millions of dollars in the bank. It really is. People might argue that, but I'm telling you, it is what counts, because you
Yes,
don't get it back.
I agree. And if there are parents out there listening to this interview, I strongly suggest that if you did something unpleasant to your kids when they were young, of course they won't remember. But if you remember, that means that that action bothers you still. So just go sit with them and ask for forgiveness. Even if they, again, if they won't remember, but asking for forgiveness and ask them to reply back that I forgive you, you're going to feel so
Correct.
much relief for sure.
It is, and I think that this is a time on the planet that every single person is given an opportunity right now, because we are regrouped with our core group of people that we couldn't have even planned. But that core group of people to be very present with and to ask them. You know, I know that was a journey with my children, is sometimes I would say, what was that experience like? Even on the Indian reservation, okay? Here I am, this spiritual woman, that this sounds like this great story, and I have to say I wouldn't have changed it. However, the little side note here is, at that time, I know that my son, who was 9, needed me more than I realized. And even though as a family and as a corporation that I founded, and we did wonderful things, my son, it left some impressions that he still will walk with in this day. Now, I could feel guilty for the rest of my life, but I speak to him and I say, I didn't know how much you needed me. I'm so sorry. And, you know, there'll be a time when I can make that up to you. You know, you just put it on the table and clear it off. Because even the good things, the great things we all do, sometimes there's periphery damage, because it's the perspective of each person. And it's not always clear from my perspective where everybody else is. And I've learned to try and pay more attention to that, but I probably still don't do it perfectly either.
Yes, we all have our own hobbies or our own interests and daily activities, and we are being tagged here and there. And yes, we lose sight of what's important most of the time. So,
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, it's amazing.
yeah, we all heard about the amazing energies that surround Sedona. What can you tell us about it?
Well, you know, I think one of the, we'll say, fantasies or misconceptions that exist in Sedona is that commercially, you would hear people say there are 7 vortexes in Sedona, and all these travelers come in and they're ready to just step 1 foot into the next, and they think magic is going to happen. But the misconception is, you know, just like this crystal bowl, the mountains around Sedona, we are surrounded in this valley by mountains that are crystals. And you can go out on the rocks and see the crystals. In the daylight, as soon as the sunlight hits the sand, which is just broken down rock, or the rocks, they're like a crystal. They sparkle all over. But if somebody's not really paying a lot of attention, they just look like red mountains and sand on the ground. So the point is, these energies are the whole bowl of Sedona when you come into it. And Native Americans, this was very sacred ground, like the Black Hills of South Dakota. And no one was supposed to live here. Every day I look out my windows and I see the rocks, and I thank the rocks for allowing me to live here, to appreciate and connect with this beautiful earth that gifts me a lifestyle and gives me an arena where people come looking for something that I might offer them in healing work. But there are many people who come to Sedona who don't realize they're going to come and they think they're coming here to be healed. And healing is going to make them feel great. And everything's going to magically shift. But what happens is, like all crystal, just like the bowls I'm surrounded by, crystal magnifies everything. So what happens is sometimes people come here and their lives blow up. A marriage can come and people think, oh, we're going to live in Sedona now and everything's going to be perfect. But what happens is what's dysfunctional, or what is the shadow side of all of our lives, bubbles to the surface. Mm-hmm. So it's a very challenging place to live because it magnifies, and you have to do the work or you don't stay here, or your relationship won't make it. So it's, and it also can heal things as it makes you face those pieces of your life that are not in harmony and alignment. And that's what healing is, coming back into that alignment.
Interesting. Yes. Never heard this part of the story indeed. Thank you.
Good. Well, it's, disharmony is just when something has come out of balance, when something is holding a shadow. And then again, you get into shadow work where people go, oh my God, can you take away this part of my life? This is a shadow. It's awful. These are qualities I don't like about myself. But you don't get rid of the shadow is another misconception. You work with the shadow. You integrate the shadow, because the shadow, being maybe not your best qualities, can also be qualities that helped you survive life. They got you through. To refine the shadow and integrate the shadow is much more the work.
Yes, I was told that you have to love the darkness inside you, because you are not only pure energy, we have white and dark energy as well. So no matter what you're going to do, you're going to have the dark side. Just embrace it and love it, and
absolutely,
we'll be there with you.
And where there's light, there's dark. So even here in Sedona, some people will come and, it's a spiritual community. And some people that have been here 6 months, a year, they are shocked when they connect with a lot of the darker energies that are here, who claim to be healers or very spiritual people. Where there's this much light, there's that much dark. So you navigate carefully and wisely with discernment.
Yes. Do you do your shamanic ceremonies outdoors in your yoga location or in the wild?
Well, all shamanic work should, I'll just put should, okay, be done in nature. So you really don't want to ever do, from my teachers, breath work and shamanic work indoors, because it's going to get trapped. You can't open a window. Some people are forced to do their work that way. But when you can work with people in nature, that is going to be so much more potent. And for me, when people come to me for a session, like on my website, I have descriptions up of things, but this might dissuade people, I don't know, but I'm honest. They may say, oh, I'm coming for a chakra clearing, or I'm coming for X, Y, and Z. But when the person comes, everything's priced the same on my website for a reason. Because when the person comes and I'm able to really see them and be with them, they're going to get a blend of the above for whatever can serve them. And it's just the way healing work, to me, should be done. It's not a one size fits all. And to serve that person, that's really what it's about. is meeting them exactly where they're at on that day they arrive, and taking them, whether it's in my backyard is set up with a medicine wheel and I have a lot of space in nature, but sometimes it's important to go out to work with more potent areas on the land. Like if I feel or have a person who comes to me who has had an entity attached to them and they're carrying very, very, very heavy energy and a little bit of a darkness that is not them, but has infiltrated their field and their being. There are a couple locations that I know are very potent on the land for releasing. So I would want to go do the ceremony at those places where my teachers have told me will help the work get done. I'm not doing the work, it's just coming through me. And so to find and work with those areas is a real gift to have this land in Sedona.
Yes, indeed. And if you can share, what is a, let's say, not necessarily typical, but the process going into a medicine wheel ceremony?
Okay, so a medicine wheel ceremony can follow many different cultures, like anything spiritual. Depending on the base of your teachings, it could shift into how you enter the wheel, how you work with the wheel, but there are always going to be some themes that stay the same. So for example, my medicine wheel in my backyard, to work with it during my shamanic trainings, and for me personally to work with it, you would enter in the east. And so my wheel is built on due east, due north, the actual components. Some people don't set their wheels up like that. For me, it's just very important to me to have it be that way. That's just me. That doesn't necessarily make this wheel any more powerful. But for example, when I established the wheel, it was very important that the rocks that would surround the wheel, which there's hundreds of them, it took about 6 months, and every one of those rocks has to be washed with water, preferably seawater. So I had lots of water coming from Mexico, and then, or smudged, to cleanse that rock and ask that rock to bring its energy. Then to make the wheel very potent and in balance, that formation of the rocks around the edges had to be placed in half sunlight for masculine energy and half moonlight in the darkness. So I'm the one that was doing the work to do the teachings in the wheel. My husband is a spiritual guide, but that's not what he does for a living, okay? And he couldn't help me. It was very hard for him. And he would come out with his flashlight and just give me light to do that work. And in each of the corners of wheels, traditionally you would put something to ground the energy of your lineage, your ancestral lineage. So in my wheel, I have my teeth and my children's teeth. And then my teachers' pouches are in the center. So it's the medicine of working with the wheel. So when you enter the wheel in the east, traditionally, you are coming in to a vortex that is a circle for healing, for connection to the earth and to the sky. So you would then move to the east, and the east is tied in with the animals all low to the earth, like the snakes, the ants, all the creepy crawlers, if you will. And you want to always remind people to honor the very small just as much as the big and powerful. The ants, one of my teachers changed my relationship to ants, because the ants are always working under the ground and under the land to make hearts, and they make tunnels of hearts so that we can be reminded to walk softly, and we can be reminded that our path is to be one of love and sacredness. So it's the ants that do that. And so in the east, you would do the work to assess your life, to assess what is it that I could refine in my life. Notice I'm not saying fix. We're going to refine it. And so you might come up with an aspect of your life that you get clarity that if you're on a retreat, this is 4 days I'm going to work on this aspect. Maybe it's something for the whole lifetime. So then you would move to the West, and the West represents sitting with that assessment or problem or refinement, and you have to be with it. So it ties into the animals of the West are like a wolf howling and letting go of how you are attached to the paradigm around this illusion, really, or going into a cave. The bear is in the West, and really sitting with that and realizing that it takes patience to really be with it. A bear just doesn't go in for 2 nights and comes out. The bear stays with it. So the West is really looking at assessing and embracing these aspects that you would like to heal, you would like to upgrade. And then when you move to the North is where we would go with this same issue or subject matter, and we would go to the spirit world in the North to ask for assistance, to see it from a higher perspective, to really be able to let all the emotions settle and go to the ground, and to rise to maybe say forgiveness with someone, or to rise to see it for all the good that it has already been in your life. So the animals of the North are often the eagle, the condor in South America. In Native American, it's always the white buffalo, to bring that wisdom into how you will now go forward and integrate it in a different way or release it. You know, for me, when I go stand in the medicine wheel in the North, I really think of my parents that are on the other side, and I ask them to continue to help guide my path. If you were close to your grandparents, you might ask for that, whatever. Then when you come out of the North, you come back to the East, which was where you entered. And the East, you are now emerging out of the wheel, which is where the sun comes up every morning, and where all the animals of flight are represented in the East, because everything is now renewed, and you go forward looking at life, having worked through this and having really upgraded it. So that's usually how I use the wheel with people. You can take it much deeper, but I think that might give you an overview of if I had someone who specifically has, I can look at their timeline of it, and I might suggest that if it's somebody who hurries all the time, who just doesn't want to really be with it, they just want you to fix it for them, I'm going to park them in the West, and they're going to sit there with those animals so that they can't continue to run away from the issue.
Very
So does that
interesting.
give you a little aspect
Yes,
or
yes.
angle?
Yes, very interesting.
Okay.
And do you organize the medicine wheel ceremonies at request, or you have them on specific dates and people will just sign up for it?
I do all of that per request. I integrate it into almost all my workshops. And prior to COVID, we always had a group of people who met here for like maybe 10 years every Wednesday night, and we did ceremony and we worked the wheel. But with the COVID situation, we kept with it for quite some time, and then I decided that I would pause it, only because what happened is I usually had between 10 and 20 people, sometimes more, on a regular basis. But a lot of people were really flocking in, and we were ending up with too large a crowd. And I really just had a lot of trouble coming up with a way to uninvite people. So the only way I could come up with not hurting anybody's feelings and to be fair was that for several months of the winter, we would just pause everything. Because it's not my place to ever say who can come and who can't come. And good ceremony, everyone is welcome. And one of the other criteria that you should perhaps could help people is that if it is ceremony, it should be done by donation base only. You shouldn't, let me put that, you shouldn't put a price on ceremony, because, it always works out. Some people are there who have nothing to offer except their presence, and I always remind people. And then there are other people who know how it works, and if they have the ability to leave a donation to keep things rolling, they do. And it just always works out well.
Yes, you're right. What can you share with us about your teachers here in North America or in South America?
Well, if you ask me who my greatest teachers are,
okay, yes,
I would have to say my children, because they continue to really test me. And I think this is true with all parents.
yes.
But if you look at my traditional teachers, which I know is what you're probably looking for, when I went to Pine Ridge, I had the woman who adopted me, her name was Grandma Nellie Tubles, and she was of a lineage from Red Cloud. And she was one of the greatest teachers because she slowed me down. And she is the person, the individual, who got my attention to realize that I was seeing through a set of eyes that she wanted me to shut and reopen, to not see life through my cultural materialism. And I was very familiar with a lot of the ceremonies of the Lakota, the sweat lodge and the sun dance and the hoop dance and all these 7 sacred ceremonies of the pipe and whatnot. But to have her review those and teach me from 100% Lakota was a refinement that I will always hold dear in my heart. But the real teaching was the simplicity, and how much time I was wasting hurrying, even though that sounds like an oxymoron. And that led me into Sedona, and my most profound teacher here in Sedona is a man named Bear Cloud, whom he hired me actually to work on some nonprofit, because my background is nonprofit for indigenous. So at that time I thought it was kind of like this real job, but it had nothing to do with the real job. I just was very gifted that he used that as an avenue to get me to come to Sedona in the very beginning for 2 weeks a year. I do this 2-week thing, I guess, 2 weeks a year, and I would go back to Florida, and I was kind of living here partially. And every morning he would make me get up at the crack of dawn, and I don't like morning. I still don't love morning. And I would meet him and we would hike, and he was changing me without me ever knowing it. Quite the shaman. And it eventually led years later to him taking me deep in the lava tubes where you can't even see your hand in front of your face. And at the time, I didn't even know what he was teaching me. It's only in hindsight that I realized how powerful the experiences were. And I really dearly love my husband of 31 years, but I would never follow him places I followed this man, Bear Cloud. I never, ever told him no, and I never questioned him. It's a little beyond words. And one of my early profound experiences was in this lava tube, and I grew to love the dark more than seeing with my eyes, but at that time, I didn't love the dark a whole lot. And he took me to the lava tube and left me there for a very long time. And to this day, I don't know if he really left me there or if he was as close as I am to that computer seeing your face, because I'm going to believe in hindsight he was there sitting in the darkness watching me in case I did have a panic attack. But at the time, I didn't know that, and he's never told me the truth. And so the shamanic pieces, you go through these experiences, and what you're doing is you're overcoming your fears, and you're finding a stillness that then you can tap into at any time. And so the teachings that he gave me were scary, but they were rather profound. He probably cooked me in thousands of sweat lodges over that time to learn the art of prayer in darkness. And he is who I always would say, he taught me in those years about sacred geometry that at that time was very new to me. And the earth prophecies, he began to really have me see everything from such a higher perspective that it was very profound. And through my work with him, I then was asked to help with an event to take back some indigenous land for this tribe called the Kogi, who at that point I had only read about the Kogi in Drunvalo Melchizedek's books. So I, of course, jumped at the opportunity to assist in any way I could. Little did I know it was going to become the next decade of my life in South America. And going on those trips to South America, I truly never saw that I would go again. Every time I go, I think it's going to be my last trip. It's very, very funny. And to be taken, they meet you at a trailhead and they have translators, and you go in with your backpack. And I'm a girl who likes bubble baths, trust me. But if it's has a purpose behind it or is a unique opportunity, then I can come home to my bubble bath, is how I feel. But they would wear you down like all shamanic experiences, and you would hike for 12, 15 hours. They're going to get you to the dark. And the teachings began so that I could understand their work. And they were trying to acquire some land that the park had taken away from them. And it's really quite fascinating. What's funny is I just kept trying to do what they expected of me. And what was actually in motion was so much bigger than I ever could imagine, because they allowed me to bring visitors with me because I could get money from people to go on these treks. And then the money would be given to the Kogi. And I was continuing learning and having great experiences, but I would have my expenses paid, to be honest, and give guidance and get the people from here to there. They never allowed me to put anything on Facebook, or I couldn't print anything. It had to always be word of mouth. And for 9 years, they would always tell me, you'll have 8 visitors, you'll have 13 visitors, they were always right. And they would start to come to people in their dreams, and then the people would be guided to me or find me, and then I could verbally talk about this trip or experience and show them pictures of the past. So that's how it worked. But long story short, to wrap it up for you, is the Kogi at the top of this mountain in Colombia, South America, where they went up the mountain, they were reacquiring the land that was their sacred land to pray to the cosmos and communicate to the cosmos. And they explained to me that in this first phase, they were wanting a sun and a moon lodge. And that made a lot of sense to me. It was easy. I didn't question it because of my decades in yoga. Of course, you need a sun lodge for the men. You need a moon lodge for the women. And on subsequent trips, there would be other round lodges because they live in round to keep the energy moving and whatnot. Well, what got constructed up there by them and all the elders was our cosmology. So there's a hut that's Venus, a hut that is Jupiter, a hut that is Saturn. And when they're wanting to communicate to the ETs, they're on this land at the top of a mountain, connecting to the energies on each one of those planets and bringing that healing onto the earth for humanity.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think I remember reading the story in the same book you mentioned. I think is the power of the heart or something
Right.
like that.
Yes, it's called the heart of the world.
The heart, okay, yeah.
And they are the keepers of the grids and to the heart of the earth, Mother Gaia, that then feeds all of humanity through our feet. And so it's that connection to them and what their prayers are. And I mean, there's many Aborigines on the planet. There are Tibetans that are very enlightened beings. So it's not that they are the only ones, but in my travels, my experiences, they are the most enlightened beings I've ever met.
Yeah, you are so blessed.
Oh my gosh, like I said, back to it's the people that Spirit sends me that have guided my path. So I'm very, very lucky. Very lucky.
Do you have your own apprentices right now?
Well, I didn't go looking for them, is what's funny. But during this COVID time, they appeared. I don't know if it's because it was time or it was something that Earth time was allowing. And so I have about 4 what I would call true apprentices, maybe 6, couple new ones. I don't know if they'll stick with it. And I'm very blessed. They're not really apprentices, they're fellow travelers and journeyers, but having had my yoga studio and a real base to work out of in Sedona for about 8 years, I very much am lucky to have about 25 core people who are my extended family, and they teach me and I teach them, and they come every day to learn about astrology and guidance of all the gifts that I'm given. And so to pass that along, it's another reminder sometimes, because I had some people, they were Asian people who came into my pod and my tribe, and they built my confidence a little bit. So I will thank them for that, because they really harped on me that I should have my message out in a really big arena, and they got me all excited. I think it was a test of ego, and they wanted to help me, and they meant well. But you know what? It didn't feel right for me. And I have never regretted it, but I think that it's one person at a time, smaller tribes, that then everybody goes out and does that to larger groups. I don't know that it has to be this giant arena for any one person to have to take that responsibility on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think when it becomes too commercialized, people lose interest or faith.
It is. And I've watched so many people who go down that route, and their own personal, maybe it's selfish of me, but the quality of their own personal life and their personal practice really shifts. And I really love my life just the way it is. And I just have to trust that that's what I'm supposed to do, maybe in lots of little pods of different people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and not only that, but it gives you the opportunity to focus more on each person who requires your help rather than the
It
big
is.
room.
You
Yeah.
know, the people who find me are people who are really looking for a quality, deeper journey. They're not people who are just want a quick hit. They're there for the long run, and for that, somehow it's the flavor that works for me. So I'm very grateful for that. They're genuine.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to
You're
ask you
welcome.
how much Hopi knowledge is still around in that area or around US, and if anything was put into a written format.
Yes, I would say that the book that if someone was interested in that, the book they should acquire on Google is called simply, it's easy to remember, The Book of the Hopi. And it is this very small book that tells the history, the ceremonies, the life of the Hopi and the connections of Hopi spiritualism tied in with Tibet and the Dalai Lama. And so those two prophecies have gone on for thousands and thousands of years. And so I think of many, let me correct myself, because that would be a little not encompassing, but on North America, I think the Hopi traditions are still very much being enacted and lived out. And it takes, you cannot take any pictures on Hopi land. You have to ask permission if I'm with someone. I can't just go up there and drive through. I could be stopped and then asked to turn my car around. So they've really maintained their sovereignty. And if anyone is ever interested in coming with this particular family and several up there in the clans, I am honored that I can connect people and take them, and then they make the money for the day, because that's a donation of how they still feed their kids, still doing their crafts. I have some jewelry here that I buy from the specific people that the money goes right to them, because if they, there's just nothing there like we think of. People don't understand the American, they think so many of these reservations have become, huge and very lucrative with the gaming industry. But there are many that have stayed traditional, and they're the ones who really could use a little more support, because they're not going to change their traditional lives.
And they shouldn't. Yeah. Thank you.
No, thank goodness. I'm happy. And I mean, in some ways, one of the questions in fundraising I used to always get asked is, well, why aren't other Native people helping these Native people? And unfortunately, they have gone off and left them. That's what materialism does. But it doesn't matter. To me, the ones that are the luckiest are the ones still living traditionally. Yes. That just need a little bit of support.
Yes. Mally, you are surrounded by beautiful crystal balls. Would you enchant us with a little bit of sound healing, please?
Oh, I would love to. Do you think your audience is aware that all the bowls, you want me to just for like 90 seconds give a little information of what the bowls are?
Please,
okay.
Yeah.
So all these different bowls, let me just pick up like a couple. So this particular pink one is made of rose quartz, and it is yagna, which the gray areas on this bowl are ashes from the sadhus in India along the Ganges. This is a pure little emerald bowl, and every bowl, this is rhodochrosite, so the different colors, the different crystals that they're made of send out healing qualities of that particular crystal if someone had an imbalance going on or disharmony. And then each of the bowls, when I chime in a moment, resonates to a different note that then correlates to a different chakra, a different area of the body. So when people are interested in maybe purchasing a bowl or starting with a bowl, I try and find out a little bit about what is happening in their life, what their story is, so that they can acquire at least a beginning of a bowl that is going to help bring that story and illusion back into harmony. So yes, I'm happy to. And I don't know how well it's going to record. There's a special speaker that gets hooked up if I do this online. But anyway, and
we'll try.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I have lots of bowls to sell. And if anybody just wants information, they don't have to buy something. I'm happy to share my knowledge.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's wonderful, wonderful to talk to you and
Well,
gain
thank you
much
so
knowledge.
much. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your patience since I'm not the technological wizard. I don't claim to be.
It happens to anyone, every one of us. And
it does at times.
Thank you.
So many thanks and blessings to you over the holidays.
Thank you. Same to you. And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Share it, like it. Support me on my Patreon account. And until next time, love and gratitude.